Hello everyone, you've tuned into another segment of our Business and Tech Talks. I'm your host, that girl, Jenna Karasoa. I'm so happy that you're here with us. At any point in time you're consuming this content, I can only hope you're doing well. And as always, I apologize if I waste your time. But right now we're currently in our good book, Crucial Conversations, Chapter 9. We are almost complete with this. I am super excited. I think we have about 2 more lessons, but for right now we are in Chapter 9, and it is full of so much good practical information. It's titled Move to Action, and we're going to be talking about today how to decide 4 methods of decision making with 4 important questions to ask, and then segment 3, decision making blunders and solutions. So with that, we're going to just quickly jump into this. A lot of good information. This chapter is specifically designed to get you into taking actions. You've had a conversation. It was a crucial conversation. You got a lot of information. So where do you go from here? Like, now we're going to talk about how we take all these ideas that's up in the air and actually put them into practical use. So very, very excited to get into this. Huge fan of this book, and like I said, we have about 2 more lessons left, and we're going to wrap it up for this season. Cannot wait. Okay, so for segment 1, how to decide methods of decision making. So having more meaning from all different parties does not ensure that it's agreed on what you're going to do with all the information. So there's about 2 reasons people feel like converting their ideas and getting it into actual action. So one is oftentimes they're unclear about the expectations of how the decisions will be made. And then also there's realistically poor performance acting on decisions that they do make. So it's just a little bit of human error there, but it's very, very common. And this is why we're going through the book, to prevent these things. So on page 162, quoted very, very importantly, dialogue is not decision making. So 2 of the riskiest times during a crucial conversation is the very, very beginning, when you're introducing all the heated stuff, negative things you don't really want to get into. So that's very, very risky. But then also at the closing, at the end, how do you actually get these decisions into realistic things? How do you change? So continuing on. And also we have to be very careful that with the decision making, we don't want to create any violated expectations. So again, 2 more problems that often arise. People may not understand how decisions will be determined. And then 2, no decision ends up getting made. So we're going to have to figure out how to overcome that. So we have to decide to decide. Page 163, a great quote. Don't allow people to assume that dialogue is decision making. Dialogue is the process for getting relevant meaning into a shared pool. So the process involves everyone, but it does not mean that everyone is going to be in the decision-making process. So avoid violated expectations. Divide the dialogue from decision-making. Make clear how decisions are going to be made and who's involved, and also the explanation as to why. So when there is clear authority, let's say that you are in a position of leadership, you decide what method. But when the line of authority is a little bit unclear, again, another quote on page 164, use your best dialogue skills to get meaning and then jointly decide who's going to decide. So a very, very short segment, kind of an introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and take a quick little pause here. Kind of allow you to think about what we've done and discussed. A lot of people think that, hey, you know what, we should just be able to make a decision right here. We have all the information, but like realistically, there's still another layer to the decision-making process through the effective dialogue. And this is for families, this is for peers, coworkers, corporations, what have you. It's all very, very relevant. And oftentimes this book explains that it's very, can kind of get misused, not handled appropriately. So segment 2, we're going to talk about 4 methods of decision making, which is called command, consult, vote, and then consensus. And then we're also going to be talking about 4 important questions you need to ask in order to properly get the tools and information out most effectively. So with command decisions, this is made with no other involvement, sometimes outside of your circumstances or outside of your control. And a lot of time employees assume that their bosses are just giving out commands, not even thinking. but they don't realize that they're simply passing along a demand. They have very, very little control on what they can actually do. So, page 165 quoted, "With command decisions, it's not our job to decide what to do. It's our job to decide how to make it work." So the next one is consult. This is the process where others are invited to influence the decision makers before a final choice is made. And then all the ideas are collected from the experts and any person who has a sincere interest. And then they make a choice, and then the rest of the people are informed. And this can be a very effective way to get support without slowing down the decision-making process. The third one is to take a vote. This is a great time saver, but it's not to be used when the entire team doesn't agree or the other half who might lose does not support the decision that's made. It's most effective when the other people who may not get their choice, they're still okay with the outcome. And then the last one, number 4, is consensus. And this is everyone talks openly and honestly, and you have to agree to one decision. And this should only be used with complex or very, very risky issues where everyone must support the final choice. So consensus isn't always easy to get to, but this is where the dialogue skills are very, very important and imperative. So here are 4 questions you need to ask before you choose your decision method. First of all, who cares, who knows, who has to agree, and how many people are going to be involved. So first and foremost, who actually cares? So don't waste your time involving people who could care less, but we want to encourage those with the sincere interest to definitely take part in the decision making. Who knows? So find out who are the experts in the group, the expertise in a certain field, encourage them, but also to save time, avoid all old news and information that doesn't bring any type of relevance to the discussion. And then who has to agree? So you have to make sure that all the important people are there, because supervisors or people who are going to be greatly affected by this decision, and make sure that they're aware and that you have everyone's cooperation. So again, these are 4 questions you need to ask before you figure out which type of method you're going to use to decide on something that you're trying to figure out. And then number 4, fourth question, how many people is it worth involving? So the goal is to have the least amount involved while making sure the quality is still there. Now on 167, great question. So this is if you're having a board meeting. Ask the question, do we have enough people here to make a good choice? Will others have to be involved to gain their commitment? So a little exercise for you personally. Okay, so with yourself and a team member or your spouse or whomever you choose to have us, make a list of all the decisions that have been made in the past and discuss how each decision was made. Then ask yourself how decisions should be made using those 4 questions. I'll repeat them again. The who cares, the who knows, the who must agree, and how many people are involved. And then after you figure that out, decide from there about your future decision making. And this can be very, very helpful, especially if you have a lot of children, teenagers who are trying to, find a little bit more independence and they're still, learning their roles and their point in life. This is a great way to, hey, you know what, we're going to have a discussion, family meeting, and we're going to get this figured out. So that will sum up our second segment. Again, it was 4 decision-making methods and 4 questions you need to ask before you even jump into that. So that is awesome. Great information. I absolutely love this book, and I'm actually looking forward to going through it again. So my goal is to have classes and lessons on it and do a little bit more exercises and actually go into more detail, because the book gives you so much more information than what I'm offering. So looking forward to it. Stay tuned for more. Okay, so segment 3 is going to be a little bit lengthy, a lot of good information. So we're going to be talking about decision-making blunders and solutions. So all 4 of the different types of decision-making methods, we're going to break those down, and then they have a couple of extra little tidbits here. So a little bit lengthy, and I'll try to break it down as nicely as possible so you can kind of follow along and definitely get all the good information without, hopefully, without any confusion. Okay, so we talked about already command. So the appropriate use of command. 168. For years, employees have complained that their bosses are too bossy. They hand out orders like Halloween candy, telling people what to do and restricting them. So interestingly enough, today's generation of employees and children, they expect to be involved more in the decision-making process, more so than their grandparents ever faced. So we call it the empowerment movement. Younger people, they want to think, decide, and they're willing to take on more responsibilities. So with command decisions, consider, don't pass out orders like candy. Ask what elements may be flexible, and you have to consider. Yes, there may be, you may not be able to control the standard, but you could possibly decide how the work is done. Find anywhere there's any type of flexibility, and give your employees a little bit of the freedom and allow others to choose. And they also give the example of a teenager. Yes, you want them to have a clean room and clean bathroom, really, really hygienic. Allow them to possibly consider their own design, coloring, painting the walls, allowing them a little bit of creativity and freedom, but with the agreement that you need to uphold these type of standards and expectations. So just a little small example from a little, more of a personal, down to earth, not so hard, scary, rigid work environment. There's different ways to be flexible and have good communication. So with command decisions also, please consider, explain why. And this is when you give the reasons, when you're giving someone an order, it really helps. The knowing why helps, it makes it easier for the what. So not everyone and not every time and every circumstance deserves an explanation, but it's definitely helpful and makes things a little bit easier. So the next one's the do's and don'ts with the consultation. We talked about command decisions. Now let's talk about the do's and don'ts of consultation. This one's very important. Before people contribute, make sure that they do understand that even though you're consulting with them, it doesn't mean that there's going to be necessarily a consensus or that their opinion is even going to be necessarily the final decision. So to avoid the unexpected hurt feelings or, what was the word? I want to repeat it specifically what it was called. Violated expectations. Yes, to avoid that, please give every person upfront the information that they need to know. Okay, so again, we're talking about the do's and don'ts of consultations. So when do you use these? When many people are affected and the information will be needed to be gathered quickly, but also every person there is really, really passionate about the decision. It's very important, and there's lots of options, and many of them are going to be controversial. So it's very important that you have the consultations, you get as much information as possible. It says find ways to get in contact with many different people, but not just your friends. You're trying to get the best decision and make the best decision for everyone. So get as much input as you can. And also very important, do not pretend, don't go asking other people's opinions if you already have your mind made up. Okay, be sincere. If you want to ask people's opinions, go get the information. If you already have your mind made up, then make up your mind and tell everyone we've already made a decision. So don't pretend. But also announce what you're doing so other people can get involved and they can talk to other people and you can have more conversation going on. So it's very important for the decision-making process to get as much collaboration. So when you make your decision, though, report that decision. So when others are kind enough to share their opinions, they deserve to know what you decided and why. And there's no point in keeping it a secret. They're going to find out eventually, so it's better that they hear it directly from you. Again, this is even if their opinion hasn't been considered and you don't want to hurt feelings, it's better to just say, hey, this is a decision we made. I appreciate your input. We had to come to this consensus and carry on about your day. So very, very important. So next one is holding a good vote. So we need to first weigh the consequences. People need to know, hey, this is the worst case scenario. This is what happens. This is what you stand to lose. But you only need to vote when the losers do not care about the results that much. With children, if you're going to have them take a vote, teenagers, preteens, they need to understand what they risk losing before the vote. So you need to know when to do this. If the issue at hand is not too imperative and people want to save time. Also important, don't cop out with a vote. Don't just say, well, let's just take a vote really fast. No, there's page 171. Never to replace patient analysts in a healthy dialogue. So let's continuing on. Surviving the joys of consensus. So here, everyone is affected cares about the situation. There are several options, and there's a consensus that is needed for this crucial conversation. Everyone has to agree. So on, again, 171, the authors are going to be honest and say, this is not an easy process, and it's usually not handled well. But considering what you have everyone meets, you're having an open and honest discussion with different input. You're trying to come up with you have a variety of choices and ideas, but you're trying to jointly make a final decision that each person supports. So a lot is at stake, a lot going on, but it's very important that you find the consensus. But importantly, do not force this consensus onto everything. Another quote from Abraham Maslow: if the only tool you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail, and the consensus used as a hammer, and people tend to apply it to decisions that don't require that tool. There's some things that you don't need to have a consensus on. It's just irrelevant. But also, don't try to convince others that they will get their choice. This requires give and take, compromise, with a goal to support. And please don't play the martyr. Just accept it, move on. Just time and place for things. Sometimes you have to accept things aren't going to go the way that you hoped or wanted or planned for. And also, sometimes you can't take turns. When you make a decision based on which proposal best meets needs of the group, it's not a matter of, well, last time you got your way and this time it's this person's. No, it's what's best for everyone. It's not a matter of taking turns. This one right here, I believe, is one of the most important ones, so I'm going to emphasize this one. No post-decision lobbying. No post-decision lobbying. Withholding reservations or information until after an agreement, quoted on 173, is inefficient and disloyal. If you have an issue, bring it up in front of the group. Leave the unhealthy alliance, dirty deeds, and secret discussions to people who are on reality game shows. And I'll leave it at that. Also, for the good sake of everyone involved, don't say things like, I told you so. Once you've agreed to something as a group, you support the idea, not when it fails, but actually even more so when it fails. You need to show character. When something doesn't work, you need to own up together as a team. So here's a couple of side tidbits right here. Advice for the time-bound decisions. There's times when others' input is needed, but you don't have enough time to make a decision, and that needs to be made. So they call it the fallback decision-making plan. So you have to make an announcement. This is on 173 and 174. We have a critical decision to make by 10 o'clock. I propose that we use consensus to decide. If by 9:45 no consensus, then it will become a consult decision. I will use your input and I will decide. So also make assignments, putting decisions into final steps, action steps right here. It's time to take action, so you'll have to make assignments to avoid common mistakes. So consider who does what, by when, and how will you follow up. So the who. Another funny quote on 174. Everybody's business is nobody's business. So without an actual assignment, most likely nothing will come of the work that you put into making a decision. And there is no we when we assign a job. And you have to assign a name to each responsibility. And figure out who does what. So you have to spell out specifically the deliverables you are wanting. 175, a great quote. The fuzzier the expectations, the higher the likelihood of disappointment. So, you need to be very, very clear of what your intentions are. 176, better to spend time up front clarifying exactly what you want rather than to waste resources and hurt feelings on the back end. So to help clarify, you can use the technique contrast with what you do and don't want and what you intend. By when, this part is often left out. Assignments with deadlines stimulate actions. And then goals without deadlines aren't goals, they're merely directions. So how will you follow up with this? On page 176. Always agree on how often and by what method you'll follow up. Phone call, text, etc. with confirmation of completion or tracking the milestones of in progress. So lastly and most importantly, I feel you need to document your work. Another funny quote, this chapter is full of funny quotes. 177. One dull pencil is worth 6 sharp minds. Don't leave your findings to memory. Write details of conclusions, decisions, and assignments, who does what and when, and then revisit your notes. So hold people accountable. Use the acronym STATE from Chapter 7 if jobs are not completed. And lastly, accountability increases motivation and a culture of integrity. So that will complete Chapter 9. Let me do a quick closing right here and kind of just wrap everything up because there's a lot of information. So hopefully everyone is doing well, and we're going to just wrap this up. Okay, so in closing, we're in Chapter 9, Move to Action, for our Wednesday Business and Tech Talks discussions on crucial conversations. We were going through pages 161 through 178. If you need to get a copy of this book, highly recommend it. So 3 of the major talking points again. How to decide, the 4 methods of decision making, and 4 important questions to ask. Decision making, blunders, and solutions is what we talked about today. So I wanted to also reiterate before I close out here the exercise. You personally exercise with a team or a couple. Make a list of the decisions that were made in the past and discuss how each decision is made. Then ask how each decision should be made using the 4 questions, which was, again, who cares, who knows, who must agree, and how many people is it worth involving. And then after your discussion, decide from there about the future decision-making skills. So I feel that that's extremely imperative with family life. I've been working on for at least a couple of years, perfecting essentially a family constitution, which is where you get with your family, loved ones, and you literally write down on a piece of paper or cardboard and you hang it up on the wall, and it lists out the expectations you have for your household and family rules, consequences, who's the ultimate authority figure, how you resolve issues. So I would say these tools and tips from this chapter and from actually the entire book would be a great asset to any family discussion and family constitution. So if you're interested in more information about that, please contact me because I would love to get in touch with you and help collaborate that. We're also working on clarity consultation. So if there's any time where you want just to sit and talk and get some of your ideas out of your head onto paper into something more practical, love to go through this book in more detail. Again, these are just tidbits and highlights, quick, notes, but much more information in the book. So, as always, I've been your host, that girl, Jenna Kirisoa, for our Business Tech Talks discussions. And at any point in time you're consuming this content, I can only hope you're doing well. And as always, God's peace.